Welcome back to another episode of Digging Deep. It is so lovely to have you. I want to preface, if you're watching this on the video form, but also if you're listening to audio, one, I apologize, I'm in a new space today because the one that I usually film in is being occupied right now, so we had to improvise. And two, I apologize if you can hear the AC vent right now. I can't really control that, and I'm just trying my best. The episode will be filmed regardless, so I apologize on both accounts. But today's episode, we are touching on one of my favorite topics in the entire universe, something that I hold so deeply to my heart and I think everybody should be educated about. And I just want to share it with the masses. Love. But more specifically, the female pursuit of love and the pressure that are put on women to be the ones to figure out how to have healthy love, healthy relationships, how the patriarchy is so deeply embedded in our perceptions of love and what that means. And to piggyback off of that, I just recently almost finished Sex and the City. I have one more episode left, 1.5 episodes left, and I'm hanging on to those because I do not want to say goodbye to those characters. But with that, there has been so much just further questioning and thinking about love and relationships and what it means to be an empowered woman, thinking about that in a deeper way. Because the show, for anybody that doesn't know, follows the lives of 4 women living in New York City, and I'll touch on that a little bit later, but it just follows their different archetypes and how they approach relationships and how that manifests in their life and their preconceived notions about love, dating, relationships, sex, all of that stuff. It's so incredible. But anyways, all of that got me thinking. And at the beginning of every episode, Carrie Bradshaw poses these very existential, very me-esque questions, just looking for the answers of why are we like this, why do humans behave this way, and how does it affect our mental health, our overall well-being, and just how we experience life. Are men and women wired to think about love, sex, and relationships differently? Is it simply in our nature to always disagree? Or is it our nurturing that creates the divide? Is the idea that love is exclusively a female interest and pursuit just another way for the patriarchy and capitalism to persist? With there being so many polarizing and contradicting narratives about how and what men and women think about relationships, I couldn't help but wonder, why are there so many great unmarried women and no great unmarried men? So without further ado, it is time to dig deep. I'm so excited to talk about this, and if you're watching this, I just accidentally pulled a page of my notebook out. Hang on. This episode was deeply inspired by just a quest to always gain more knowledge and understand human behavior, but specifically, I've always been very interested in and passionate about love, what it is, and as I've gotten older, really defining what that means for me and what a healthy relationship looks like, feels like, all of the things that come with that. And I feel like growing up, we're not often told what that means, what that's supposed to look like. We're just sold that we should have it, and if we don't have it, then we're unworthy, or we're different, and we're lacking something that those that do have it have. And this is especially true for women, which I hope is not a surprise to anybody, but even though it's not surprising, it is still disturbing and alarming and should be unpacked further. In the show Sex and the City, because I'm going to incorporate more episodes and just questions posed in Sex and the City in more of my episodes, just because they're very, very, very juicy and I love them and they make me very excited to learn and research deeper topics. But specifically, this question of where are all the good men? Where have they gone? Why are there so many single women that are willing and ready for relationships, willing to compromise, willing to risk their hearts, willing to make things work? Why are there so many of us, but the demographic of willing and actual ready single men is so minute, so small, so slim pickings, like Sabrina Carpenter says? In this episode, it is the first episode of the whole show, which they really came out with a bang. They started it off, and in the beginning, it just shows different contradicting narratives of what men believe about relationships and what women believe. The show is centered in New York City and follows the lives of 4 women, all with their very different beliefs about love and different ways that they practice love. So Carrie Bradshaw is the main journalist, and she writes a column called Sex in the City, all about dating, relationships, love, all of that in New York City. And she is a very she's a complex character. She's something else. But there's Charlotte. She is a very conservative leaning, hopeless romantic who is an art dealer. And I more so resonate with Charlotte. She just embodies what it means to be a hopeless romantic, and we'll get into that in a little bit. There's the lovely Miranda Hobbs. She is a very independent and sure of herself lawyer, and she does not settle for nothing. And then, last but surely not least, we have Miss Samantha Jones. Samantha Jones, the woman that you are. She is the very sexually empowered and sexually open, I guess is the right word. She does like marketing for these different celebrities. So all of those different tropes in their different areas. And something that I really love about this show is, yes, it is about Sex in the City. It's about love, relationships, dating, all of that. But it also is about these women's complex lives, which perfectly ties into a point that I want to start us off with. Women are conditioned to believe that love is the only thing that we're good for. Love is the only thing worthwhile. Love is the only thing that we should strive for. And that creates such an unhealthy relationship with relationships and the pursuit of love when you grow up without that. And even when you grow up and you have that stuff, it warps your brain to just pick up whatever is coming at you and not really analyzing it for, is this serving me? Is this what I really want, or is this just something that I've been made to believe that I need in order to be worthy, to be of value in this world? There's a beautiful quote from Little Women, because I am chronically a consumer of media. It says, "I'm so sick of people saying that love is all a woman is fit for, but I'm so lonely." And Greta Gerwig is incredible for adding that last bit, because yes, we love love, we yearn for love. That is an innately human desire. But without that being fulfilled in your life, it can leave such a deep, empty hole that goes so far and is so deeply embedded into our society. Because we live, unfortunately, in a patriarchy, which is built on the success and the furthering of men, not women. And unfortunately, women are often sold this idea that love is our job. Love is a woman's work. To lean into feelings of love, nurturance, kindness, those more quote-unquote feminine traits, is to be weak. And a man should not do that. The last thing a man would want to do is be feminine. So when love is associated as a female trait, the last thing a man would want to do is feed into that. Stereotypically. I'm speaking in obviously big generalizations, but it is tracked in our society that this has been the way that it's gone. A lot of times, men are often not conditioned to believe in love or just talk about and be open to love in the way in which women are. And I am almost done with The Communion by Bell Hooks. And we know that every time I finish one of her books or read a new chapter, honestly, I have a revelation and I need to share it with you. So, here we are. Her book touches a lot about the societal implications and conditionings and force-feeding of women to be interested in love. Bell writes that women are not inherently more interested in or more able to love than men are. From girlhood on, we learn to be more enchanted with love. Since the business of loving came to be identified as a woman's work, females have risen to the occasion and claimed love as our topic. Females sit with one another every day and talk about love. The most popular movies and television shows with women as the lead characters are all about the female search for love, tying in Sex in the City. In every single episode, no matter where they are, no matter how different their lives are, whatever different paths they're on, the girls always find a way to walk down the luscious streets of New York or find a cafe or bar to sit in and talk about love and their relationships. Because through talking about it, one, we remove the stigma of it being a taboo topic, and two, we're able to find community, or as Bell puts, communion. Women are more conditioned to talk about love and to be interested in the topic, but that doesn't make it a woman's work. That doesn't make it a uniquely feminine thing. Women idealized as mothers were seen as uniquely situated for the task of nurturance. The working man of the 20th century had no time for realizing a love rooted in romantic traditions, which required of the love devotion and communication. His time was not his own. It was the duty of the wife or mother to produce this love by herself in the factory of the home and offer it to the man when he returned. Rather than being inherently able to nurture, females learn how to nurture or how to pretend that they are nurturing. Girls learn how to be mothers by imitating female caretakers, and by ritual playing with dolls. Male children are not consistently taught how to nurture. Instead, they are most often aggressively socialized to reject nurturance and choose domination. War games and all games of pretend violence teach boys that their role is to take life when necessary. Most boys learn that to be truly masculine, they must be able to take life, not to give life and nurture life. I need to put the book down for a moment because we need to digest what she just wrote. There's a lot of conversation about, and this has been deeply embedded in our society, this is no new idea, but the fact that men and women are different. Men and women think differently, men and women are wired differently. And obviously, I am not a neuroscientist. I do not study that, but one, from observation and from doing research on that slightly, obviously there's always more I could do, but researching that, yes, we have aspects of our brain that differ. But if we are looking on the basis of if we come into this world thinking of love in different ways, I simply think that it breaks down and boils down to our conditioning, the way in which we are nurtured and conditioned to talk about these topics and view them. When you are born, man or woman, you do not favor love over domination. You do not favor love or think it's a taboo topic or think that it shouldn't be talked about or prioritized. You are open to whatever. It is then the conditioning by your parents, the people around you, the media you consume. That is what shapes your mind, and that is what tells you what is supposed to be prioritized, what is important, and what you, as your role in society, should be interested in. It is through our conditioning that men are typically turned away from nurturing, what it means to be a caretaker, provide in the emotional arena, and where women learn to take on the heavier load. In an article called Battle of the Brain by the Northwestern Medicine, just to point out some differences in the brain, women tend to have stronger connections in side-to-side thinking. So this leads to better intuitive thinking, analyzing, and drawing of conclusions, whereas men tend to have stronger front-to-back connections, which can lead to heightened perception and stronger motor skills. This is a very reputable medical source talking about the differences in the male and female brains. Nowhere in those descriptions does it say women process love differently, men don't think about love. It is through our conditioning, through repeated messages, that reshape the way that our brain processes information and prioritizes different information. Yes, women can be generalized as being more emotional beings, but that is simply because we are fed that we are supposed to prioritize those things. If men were given the same expectations and given the same emphasis to think about love as women were, we would be living in an entirely different world. And it's really sad that it's conditioned them for so long to not make love a priority and not think about how they can be a healthy partner, how their actions affect others, how to better show up in relationships. And women often have to be the ones figured out alone. And not only are we doing it alone, but when we try to reach out to people and talk about it honestly and openly, we're shamed for it. We're told to silence our stories. There has to be a change, and that's a big reason why I have this, because if I know one thing, it's that talking can help things. It may not fix the problem, but at least it makes you feel less alone, and knowing that this dialogue exists can make a really big difference. With the pursuit of love and how Bell Hooks talks about how it is so embedded from childhood onward, we are conditioned as women to focus on love, focus on whether or not we're getting relationships, whether or not other people are, what they're doing, and maybe pointing out flaws in ourselves or perceived flaws, because truly, we all deserve love no matter what. With that comes at a certain time a sense of hopelessness, a sense of restlessness, truly being tired of pursuing something and not seeing a reward. And I have so many phases of my life where I go, I'm so excited, where's my Prince Charming? Where is he? But also knowing that I can be my own savior. And it'll just go back and forth of me being so optimistic about love, truly believing in it, and just being open to seeing how it will come into my life. And on the other side, just being so tired of having to work at love, putting myself out there, the rise of dating apps, having to play this game of love, and commodifying love nowadays. It's exhausting. And I'm tired. So many women are tired, which is why there's a rise of women choosing to be single now over being in relationships. And I think it's a beautiful privilege that we have nowadays where we don't depend on men financially or for that sense of stability and security in our lives. We can be businesswomen, we can be career driven and build a life for ourselves. And if we choose to, we can have children on our own. That is a very feasible path of life to take. But wouldn't it be so much better if you had someone to do it with you? Wouldn't it be so much better if you had someone to support you through that? You didn't have to carry all the weight alone. And as someone that deeply craves that sort of partnership and having that support system and someone with me to do life with, not just a casual night, like, it is seemingly an impossible task to find someone, which is why I think it's so interesting, the discrepancies of ready women who are working towards their goals, who are receiving higher education if that's what they want to do, who are making a life for themselves and are also building their emotional intelligence and their emotional toolbox. There are so many more women like that versus men, because men are not socialized to view love and think about relationships in the same way that women are. That's just how it's always been, but I don't think that's how it should stay. And I think that conversations like this are so important and pushing the pendulum forward. I don't know if that's the right word, but it sounded fancy, so I'm going to keep it. Another aspect of this that I want to talk about before we get into our little subgenres, because you know that I get really excited talking about things like this, but in Belle's book, and also just an observation that I made, a lot of times when talking about love, the advice that is out there, it's oversaturated to say the least, but it is so counterproductive and so not helping anyone in the slightest. She brings up books like Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Belle talks about how in the book by John Gray, he is further perpetuating the idea that men and women just are wired differently, and it can all be going back to the way that our brains are constructed, which just further emphasizes the idea that men do not have to put in the work, that women are supposed to be the ones doing all the heavy lifting when it comes to love. And there are many different toxic books that exist out there like this, but specifically Belle says that in Gary's work, male lack of interest in emotional connection is always treated as though it were normal and natural. Yet he most reveals his underlying support of patriarchy by the way in which he makes a virtue of male withholding. The fact that men use emotional withholding as a weapon of psychological terrorism is never discussed. It is a woman's fault if she lacks the skills to cope with male withholding. It is books like these that can seemingly be advertised as trying to help women understand men better. There's a book called Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, or it might be Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady, but Steve Harvey. It's a book turned movie, which, you know, if there's a movie adaptation, I'm going to watch it, but it's books like that and just media and language like that that can mask as having this feminist agenda of empowering women, equipping them with the tools of how men think, that are truly just further perpetuating the ideas of patriarchy and capitalism, pushing those forward. Men are not designed to not think about their emotions. They are conditioned to think that it is not a priority. Because what do women do? Women are more emotional beings. We wear our heart on our sleeve because it's more normalized for us to talk about that. But that doesn't mean that only women can do that stuff. That doesn't mean that if you do have emotions and are upfront about them as a man, that you are weak or that you're less than or that you should be talked down on, or called feminine. And in this conversation, a big thing that I've noticed and heard, read about, all that stuff, is the idea that to men, patriarchal men, that's what I'm talking about, that's the demographic that we're talking about, to patriarchal men, the worst thing that you could be is a woman. And what do women do, quote unquote? They feel. What do women talk about? Love. What are women interested in? Healthy relationships. So the worst thing for that group of men is to be like them. So they are going to be the anti of that. They are going to directly oppose it in their actions, their language, the way they condition their children. They are going to push that idea that to be a woman is to be weak, to be a woman is the worst thing that you could be, so we are going to be everything that they are not. Oh yeah. Bell says that anti-patriarchal thinking acknowledges the reality of biological differences between genders, but recognizes that cultural conditioning has shown itself to be stronger than anatomy, and that anatomy is not destiny. I feel like we've all been briefed on the idea of nature versus nurture. And specifically as it relates to this issue, women are nurtured to be nurturing. We are nurtured and conditioned to think about love more than men. It's seen in movies, literally Disney movies. If you think about Disney princesses, it's common that when those movies were first coming out, the typical trope was that the girl was incapable of saving herself or doing anything for herself, and she needed a man to come in and save her, sweep her off her feet. And when he did come in and make the grand gesture, they lived happily ever after. But no one talks about what happens after that happily ever after. No one ever talks about what it means to be an independent woman pursuing love, what it means to be a woman with goals and ambitions and things and dreams and other pursuits besides love, but still craving it because you can, you're human, that's what we do. But women are so much more complex than just being reduced down to love and la-di-da, just talking about sex, dating, relationships with their friends. But also, why is that a bad thing? Why is that negative? We find so much community and safety in talking about love and sharing our stories with women, and in a world that is built against women, it is not designed for us to succeed. That is the saving force. That is the uniting glue that keeps us together, specifically women. And it really pains me and makes me sad, and I would love to do more episodes about this, about how men can start to have those sort of conversations and normalize vulnerability, emotional intelligence, talking about their relationships, their experiences with love, their pursuits of love, how they genuinely feel about love, what they think. Because I feel like men are not often asked about that. Because, again, reinforcing the patriarchal agenda, love is a woman's work. Why would a man do that? Why would a man be there? Like, the way that we can start unpacking that is by addressing the long history that exists that builds this great divide between us that pins men and women on opposite ends, saying that we can't possibly coexist because we just are wired differently. Unpacking that and seeing how it applies to your own life and your experiences, and then actively working in small ways first, because that's the way that we can build progress, working to remove that stigma and removing the negativity and unhelpful connotations surrounding that. Love is not a woman's job. Love is not exclusively a female topic. It is a human topic. Men and women can engage in conversations about love, honestly, openly, with emotional intelligence, but it starts with us reshaping the way that we condition children. You are not born thinking about love more than someone else. You are conditioned to think about love more than someone else, and with that conditioning, you can be unconditioned. You can be rewired and taught to look at it in more of a broad, open-minded perspective. We're human, and I talk about this a lot, but I feel like if we put more of an emphasis on the fact that we're all human instead of the fact that there's men, women, black, white, religion, we're all human, and we're here to learn from each other, and perpetuating these ideas that you should think this and I should think this, and that means we can't ever share ideas or ever agree on anything ever because we're mortal enemies and we should remain that for forever, does not help anyone. I love that this book is called The Female Search for Love, because that's what it feels like all the time, that you are just in constant waiting for the love of your life to show up, because women are typically the ones conditioned to think that love is going to come in and save them or change their life or make their life better than it already is or add meaning. There's the idea that you have a soulmate, that you have the perfect one, the one perfectly fitted for you. You're a puzzle piece that is not whole. Someone needs to come in there and complete you. But with different waves of feminism that have reconstructed that idea and broken it down, we know that we can be empowered on our own. We know that. But we also know that it is incredibly empowering to openly admit that you want love, to openly admit that you are trying to find love. In that pursuit, it can be incredibly exhausting. And that's just bottom line. Especially with all of the things that get in the way nowadays, all of the factors. Something that I've noticed from my own experience is that with such a hyper awareness of all the things wrong in the world, it makes me want to keep my love sacred to myself until I find someone that I know would know what to do with it. There's a rise of women choosing to be single nowadays, way more than before, thanks to feminism that empowers them and gives them the confidence to stand alone. But with acknowledging that there are less and less, or seemingly less, men that are ready for relationships and that are suited for you, the alternative is just being alone. And that is terrifying, especially in a world that conditions you to think that the only way to be successful in both your emotional and economic status is to be married with someone else. To stand alone is to risk being ridiculed, to risk hurt, but also you're protecting yourself from being hurt by someone who doesn't know how to take care of you, who doesn't know how to love you and cherish you in the way that you deserve. Funny enough, the character Samantha Jones, in real life, Kim Cattrall, she is unmarried, and she said that she would rather be single than be in a marriage where she's not happy, and she would rather leave somewhere if she's not having fun. Like, that idea that we no longer have to be stuck in these relationships that are unfulfilling, that are draining, that are more taxing than rewarding. We don't have to stay there anymore. We have the power, we have the tools nowadays to leave and find different ways to fill our own cups. But that doesn't deny the fact that it's hard. It's hard, it's exhausting. And at the end of the day, because we're human, you could still want love. But where do you find it? As someone that doesn't want to settle, as someone that has very clear standards, someone that is established in their being and is very dedicated to where they want to end up, how do you unpack that, and how do you accept the fact that this thing that was promised to you your whole life may not happen for you? I'm not saying ever, but it may not happen to you now. And in high school, I thought, because I was told, and I was sold this narrative, that I was going to meet the love of my life, we were going to be high school sweethearts, live happily ever after. That didn't happen. Okay, so I reevaluated. I said, not high school, we'll try college. I'm currently in college. I've experienced a year of college. I moved schools, yada, yada, yada. But at my big university, which was another area that I was another area that I was sold this narrative of love. The men are going to be so much better in college. They'll know what they want. That didn't happen for me. And so it's this rewriting of the story, rewriting of the narrative that it's not happening in the way that I was sold. So how can I find a way to still have hope and believe in love? I always say that I'm a hopeful romantic because for as long as I've been thinking about love, I have been full of hope, full of optimism, full of just this lust for love and open to receiving it whenever it comes to me. And that's caused me to be a little too optimistic about certain connections when they were clearly not meant for me, which is a very common thing for a lot of women that have that hopeful romantic belief. But also, I definitely have a lot of moments that feel hopeless. And the idea of hopeless romantic is like the general narrative. It's a general archetype that women are often placed in. And it's categorized by a sense of naivety. I don't know if I said that right. A sense of being naive. This idea that you don't know yet, really, the complexities of love. You don't really know what it all entails because you may have not experienced it yet. So you're believing what is sold to you, which is this picture-perfect love, easy relationship that doesn't require any sort of compromise, any sort of hard discussions. any sort of growth, both personally and together, love is just easy. And once you get it, you don't have to do any work to sustain it and make it last. With hopeful romantics, I feel like as we experience more in the world and we realize how hard it really is to find someone that matches our freak, how hard it is to find someone that is on your same level and on an even playing field, you begin to get disillusioned. You have been sold this idea that you are going to get this romantic experience that is going to change your life and is going to be this soul-crushing, earth-shattering, eye-opening, heart-bursting experience that's going to change you forever. And when that doesn't happen, you're left wondering if it's a you thing, if there's something wrong with you, if you're doing something wrong, if you maybe just need to try harder. And there's this episode in Sex and the City, season 5, episode 2. Charlotte, the hopeful romantic of the show, just got out of a really, really, really bad marriage. She filed for divorce. And with Charlotte, she is the one that relentlessly believes in her Prince Charming, her perfect guy. And she will do anything to get that. And she finds this guy in the seemingly perfect meet cute way. She's running across the street, falls, he's in the taxi that stops in front of her. She has this very movie-esque, movie magic moment where she looks at him and knows, this is what I've been waiting for. You're the one that I've been looking for. And so this seemingly perfect relationship starts. They get married, and they begin to start trying to have children, and a lot of infertilities come up, and a lot of deeper issues are surfaced, and she realizes that this perfect relationship is not what it seems. The idea that she was sold that she would have this perfect relationship is not adding up. And so in this episode, she is really battling with that and finding ways to remain optimistic in the pursuit of love, because she still wants it. She still wants to find her person. It may not be who she originally thought it would be, but maybe it could be someone else. And she's at this women's conference for self-empowerment, and this lady is giving a speech about how women should view love and pursue love. She advises them to just say your affirmations in the mirror, and one day it'll work, it'll click, and the relationship will fall into your lap. A big undertone is the idea that if you're single and if it's not working, it must be a you thing. And Charlotte says to her that she has tried. She does do all the things that she's advising. She has found the perfect person, and then it fell apart. She had her perfect whirlwind romance, and it didn't work. So now what? She's left picking up the pieces of what she was sold, what she believed in so wholeheartedly, and now she's left with this more jaded perspective on love, and rightfully so, because it was painful to believe in something for your whole life and then have it not match up to what it actually is. And she's left just scrambling, trying to pick up the pieces. And after hearing her very personal experience, this lady standing on the stage in front of this room full of hundreds of women just keeps saying, well, maybe you're not trying hard enough. Maybe you should just keep trying. And whenever Charlotte rebuttals and says, I am trying so hard, the lady is left speechless. She has nothing else to say, no other beam of hope, no other piece of advice to give to Charlotte that isn't try harder. And I think that is such an unproductive thing that society as a whole tells single people, specifically single women, because single men are not socialized to be the enemies of society like single women are. But as a society, it is so common for us to say to single women that you should just try harder, that maybe you're not putting yourself out there, maybe you need to be more approachable, maybe you need to blah, 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 maybe you need to shut the fuck up, maybe you need to reshape the way you view love and the way that you socialize men to view love, because maybe then there wouldn't be such a lack of eligible bachelors. Maybe there wouldn't be such a big difference in the amount of available, ready to be in relationships single women and available, ready to be in relationships men. Why is that? Why is there this big gap? It's obvious. It's our conditioning. It's the way that we are socialized to think about love. Going back to the whole idea of to be a woman is the worst thing possible for a man in the patriarchal world, the media surrounding that conversation, specifically advice given from men, is emphasizing the fact that we're just wired differently. And in Think Like a Man by Steve Harvey, which, I'm sorry, but what makes him qualified to talk about love? Aren't you a comedian? I'm sorry. In his book, which, like I said, was adapted into a movie, it very much gives women the impression that in order to be in good relationships with men, in order to understand them, they have to either completely rewire the way that they act and shape it to be like a man, which means to be without feeling, without remorse, without an awareness of how their actions affect others, or just to be single forever. Those are your options. Again, slim pickings and not helpful advice in any way. It is so incredibly overwhelming having to always be 10 steps ahead in the dating world, always having to consider all of the possible outcomes, watching all of the TikTok people talking about their dating advice, watching all of the Andrew Tates of it all, watching all of the male advice and the female advice, and maybe if you just try harder, you'll get it. It's so hard just having all of these narratives being fed to you all the time. And I am guilty because, hey, I do interact with it. I do sit there and watch it. And I watch it, though, just to see what they're telling people, because there are so many conflicting narratives and ideas and shoulds and shouldn'ts, and you shouldn't have the 3-month rule, the 6-month rule, don't kiss him at the first date, don't have sex with him until you're married. Like, there's so many different ways that people are socializing to think about love, and a lot of them have a very, very, very patriarchal and masculine-focused mindset. The idea that you need to play mental gymnastics in order to get love is the common thread of advice. If it's not explicitly said, it's said through different ways in which they advise you to go about love. And it is just so heartbreaking, the fact that that's the way in which our world has gone now. And I'm not saying that it's all bad, but there are just so many people that genuinely believe that and that are telling people that this is how you get love, this is the way that women like to be pursued, this is the way that you bag that girl. Like, it's just so icky and makes my skin crawl, and it's such an oversaturated field that it's hard if you aren't someone that is able to critically think and pick the good from the bad. It's hard to differentiate between what is worth listening to and what is not. There's just so much out there, and I think we just need to work together. I really do. Something that is very interconnected in the pursuit of love, especially as it pertains to women, is feminism. Not to turn this into like a history channel or anything, but we're going to get into some history, so get out your notebooks. It was very interesting to research this stuff, and there's still so much more that I have to learn, but again, I just love being able to share what I'm learning with you guys in hopes of maybe giving you a different perspective or showing you something that you didn't know, whatever that may be. So, there are 4 distinct waves of feminism. So, the first wave was in 1848 to 1920. The focus of this specific wave was the women's suffrage movement, which is the women's right to vote. The Seneca Falls Convention, which was the first women's rights convention in the U.S., happened in 1848 and kind of kickstarted this movement. It showed people that women were interested in getting rights and being treated as equals in society, and really laid the groundwork for other waves of feminism to build off of. But it is incredibly important to note, especially from the perspective that I sit at, which is a black woman, that women of color, but specifically black women, were excluded from this movement until the 1965 Act, the Voting Rights Act. So even within feminism, groups of women are left out, which, again, I'm not trying to conquer world peace right now and like fix everything, but there are so many things in our world that need to be fixed systemically. Even with women unifying, saying that we need our rights, we very clearly left out a big chunk of the female population, which are black women. So, the second wave of feminism happened in 1963 to about the 1980s. The focus of this one was the reevaluation of gender roles, reproductive rights, financial independence, workplace equality, and domestic violence. The Equal Pay Act was one of the main acts that helped push this movement forward and, like I mentioned, gave black women the same right that white women were given in the 20s. The Roe versus Wade case, which happened in 1973, was another monumental case, which is so terrifying that we are reevaluating that in the year 2024. If anybody is unfamiliar, Roe versus Wade was giving women reproductive rights, giving them autonomy over their bodies and the choice to choose what they do with their bodies. Because at the end of the day, what someone does with their own body is none of your concern, and specifically women, being life givers, should be, at the end of the day, the ones determining what happens to their body. During this time, books like The Second Sex and The Feminine Mystique were published and challenged us to reimagine gender roles. So throughout this time, when all of this turmoil in society was going on, these books posed a different guiding posts and kind of different landmarks to help people think deeply about gender roles and unpack ways in which it's been unfair for women in society. Moving on to the third wave of feminism, which happened in the early 1990s to roughly the 2010s, the main focus was sexual harassment in the workplace and a shortage of women in positions of power. In an article from Britannica that dissects the history of this wave of feminism, it says that rather than becoming part of the machine, third wavers began both sabotaging and rebuilding the machine itself, which I love this idea of rebuilding the machine. I feel like our world is very much overdue for that even nowadays, but this third wave of feminism built on other ideas that were presented in the first two, but it really focused on the importance of rebuilding the machine. Yes, there have been things that have progressed women further in society, but at this time period, there was still so much more work to be done, and we had our work clearly cut out for us. During this time, the idea of the gender continuum was introduced, which essentially is the thesis that gender is not binary or limited to the specific genders, man and woman or boy and girl, but continuous, forming a spectrum of differing degrees and combinations of the mental, emotional, behavioral, and biological traits commonly possessed by or attributed to members of male or female sex. Essentially, this further proves the idea that I presented earlier, that men and women are not biologically completely opposite creatures. We are socialized to think and behave in different ways, and that is what creates a divide and conflict. During this time of third wave feminism, the Me Too movement came to be. It was founded in 2006 and gained a lot of popularity more so in 2017, I believe, and the focus of this movement was uniting women in their shared stories and struggles with sexual harassment. That was commonly not a very touched on topic, especially not women coming forward as being victims of this abuse, and women were commonly socialized to just endure this pain. That love was painful and you just had to do it. There was no way of getting out and there was no community in that. But it's so beautiful that things like that existed at the time. The Me Too movement that came forward allowed women to rally with one another and say, me too, I see you, I hear you, I'm struggling just as much as you are, but we can struggle together. You're not alone. And very intertwined in all of this, ironically enough, during the third wave of feminism, guess what show was produced? Sex and the City. Sex and the City came out in 1998 during a shift of more progressive feminism and reimagining the way in which women take on their sex lives, the way in which women socialize and discuss love. And I will forever and always just talk about this show because it truly, I wish I was alive during the time when it first came out, because I bet it was the most affirming and just empowering show to see that women are such multifaceted beings and we can be more than one thing. We have different interests, but we also can talk about love without it being reduced to all that we are made for. It's such a beautiful thing, but this show truly was a testament to the changing times. A lot of times, and we'll touch on this very soon in another episode, but to briefly share about it, a lot of times before this, sex was not okay for women to talk about, and sex outside of marriage, simply for the act of pleasure and not for reproductive purposes, was not normalized. And so this show really reimagined what it means to be an empowered woman in your sexuality and what it means to have sex if you want to, not have sex if you don't want to, but you get to choose. And talking about it, because we all do it. It's not gross, it's not weird, it's not this taboo thing. talking about it builds education. That way we're doing it in a safe way. This show really, it stood for so much, but it really helped to unpack a lot of the narratives that we talk about in this episode of just removing the conditioning that the patriarchy pushes down our throats and removing the stigma that men and women cannot coexist and see eye to eye on love. We can if we have open, honest discussions about it. And moving along brings us to our present day wave of feminism. And this one is more categorized by the rise of technology. Technology allows for more women to share their stories, more women to provide support and find a sense of community and safety within each other. And another big one is us just having a microscope on all of the issues in our world and how it pertains to women. Things like body shaming, beauty standards, mental health, internet activism, and a big one is male accountability. More than ever, we are seeing people in the media and we are being witnesses of their very blatant misogynistic ways. And with that, with this knowledge from all the other waves of feminism, with this hyper-awareness of what is right and what is wrong, we are able to point out to men nowadays, and we have a group of women pointing this out. We're not alone in this, saying, that's not okay, you shouldn't act, behave, or treat others the way that you do. That's wrong, and you should be held accountable. This idea that love is just a woman's work is slowly but surely being knocked down, and it truly is being asked of us that we find partners that believe in female empowerment, believe in being equal participants in a relationship. But again, even talking about feminism and talking about being empowered in asking for what you want and being really firm in wanting a man who is morally aligned, it does require you to stand alone a lot of the times. Not everybody is willing to unpack these centuries of patriarchy and misogynistic programming that exists in our world. It's heavy, it's a lot, it's overwhelming, it's anxiety-inducing, it's all of that. I wish I could give more of solid answers on how to be okay in that longing limbo stage of wanting but not getting, doing all the things right but still not getting the desired outcome. Unfortunately, a big factor of the female search of love, unpacking all of the things that have come before and still being very firm in what you want and desire, a big aspect of the pursuit of love is the power of yet, of waiting but not putting your life on pause, knowing that the love that you want and that you long for exists because it was placed in your heart for a reason, but also you can embody that love now, knowing that sometimes good things do take time, and I hate that I'm even saying that, but it's truly the only thing that I can remind myself of, or I will go crazy. I will lose my mind, because it's like, and I'm going to do a really annoying teacher reference, but it just helps my brain connect it, but behavior management, right? Having a reward for a desired behavior, positive reinforcement. It's like telling a child that they're going to get a cookie if they do 5 jumping jacks. Okay, so the child stands up, stands in front of you, and quickly whips out 5 jumping jacks. And you're sitting there, plate full of cookies, and doesn't give them a cookie. They just did what you wanted. You promised them one thing, the reward. They did the desired behavior, but they're still not getting it. So there's a disconnect. And that's how it feels with love, the pursuit of love. Love being the cookie in this instance. We are promised this cookie, this love that will change us and fulfill all of our desires. We are promised that from a young age, and our whole lives we are socialized to think that that is all we are good for, and that is our main pursuit and our main job and goal in life. We have this cookie, and we do the jumping jacks. We do the things we're told. We do what we're supposed to, and we still don't get the cookie. And it's especially hard when you, one, are a woman and you are being told that you have this biological clock that's ticking, so it's like time is always your worst enemy and it's always working against you, but also when other people around you are getting the cookie. They're doing jumping jacks, the same as you are, they're getting a cookie, but you're not. It makes you wonder, it makes you wonder if it's something that you're doing wrong or if it's just a timing thing. And I'm still really on the fence of if love is just all about timing, but the older I get, the more I think I believe in that idea that you really do have to meet that person when they are ready to be in a relationship, and that it is not your job as a woman to mother your boyfriend or your future husband. It is not your job to build them into a good man. They should be a good man all on their own, because you are a good woman all on your own, and you two should come together as very whole beings and make each other better, enhance each other's lives. You are not this less than being that is waiting for someone to fill you and make you whole. You are whole all on your own, entirely as you are, and you are worthy of love on your own, entirely as you are. And it is incredibly powerful, while also simultaneously being terrifying to stand alone, have standards, know what you want, go for what you want, and not have it be fulfilled. And a lot of times it can feel embarrassing. And I'll be the first to say that. But that doesn't mean that you should stop doing it. That doesn't mean that you should settle for a relationship just for the sake of having one. That doesn't mean that you should shy away from sharing your stories with your friends or people that make you feel seen. Or maybe the internet, because who knows who you could touch? Who knows who you could reach? That doesn't mean that you should feel less than just because that promise hasn't been fulfilled. And I'm not here to say that it's not incredibly discouraging. I feel down about it every single day of my life, and I wish I was joking about that. And why am I tearing up? My tears are fine. It's okay. It's incredibly disheartening and hard to continue to be optimistic and try to keep the hope alive when it has never been affirmed in your life that love is on its way to you, that love exists, the love that you dream about exists. You don't know when or where or how or who, you just have to keep hoping. And there's nothing that you can do to fill that void, and a lot of people try to, whether that's getting into these situationships or just having physical relationships with no attachment. But we are human. We want love, no matter if we're willing to admit it or not. And it's not bad to say you want love. We do ourselves a disservice by denying ourselves that truth. And I think a big way that you can kind of help, I don't want to say fill the void, but you can help take the pressure off of such a laser focus on romantic love, is look at other examples of love in your life. And that is why this book is so important, because it focuses on communion and the female unity that comes with us collectively being told that we need to focus on love in the romantic sense. And that is why Sex and the City is so important, because yes, it does follow all these women and their relationships, these different men that come and go in their lives, but at the core of it, it is a show about female community and friendship. The platonic love that they share in that show is what sustains them. It is what keeps them motivated, keeps them feeling supported, keeps them willing to keep trying in romantic relationships. Without the platonic love being the center of their world, the show would not be as impactful. And without them speaking their stories honestly, even if they disagree, even if they have different ideas, even if it contradicts the patriarchy, it's important to share those stories. As a 20-something, let me not say that. As a 20-year-old, let me not act like I'm so old. As a 20-year-old, I truly do feel lied to in the context of love and relationships. I was sold this idea that I was going to have this picture-perfect relationship, if not in high school, then in college, and I'd meet my person, and we'd live happily ever after, yada, yada, yada. And I know I still have so much time. I do. And I know that it'll happen for me eventually, but I don't have it right now, so it feels really icky and really heavy and really confusing and isolating, and I don't have any single friends in my life, really, and I love all of my beautiful friends that are in relationships, but it's just hard not having that direct person to go to that understands what it's like being single. And I'm rambling because there's just so much to say about this, and I even feel like this episode doesn't cover it all, but I just want you to know that you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're not this project. You're not something that just needs to be fixed and a man will come in and fix that. You don't need to try harder. You don't need to do things that don't feel authentic and true and aligned to you. All you need to do is be yourself. The love that I desire and the love that I seek, and I know that I'll get one day, is love that doesn't ask me to be anything but myself. A love that is so pure that me showing up as I am, imperfect and all, is enough. And if that means waiting however many years 20 and counting, then I'll do it because I know that it'll be worth it, and it's not easy, and I cry about it a lot, and I get frustrated, and I get really jealous, and I get just burnt out and hopeless and pessimistic and cynical about it often. But I have to keep clinging on to the hope. Hope in all areas of life, but specifically love, is what sustains us. And something that can keep you hopeful is your community. So I hope that this can be community for you, and I also hope that you know that you are lovely, and you know that you are worthy of love, and that it's not your fault that you maybe feel like love is all you're worthy of, and that you feel like there's no good men left. That one Daya song, where do the good boys go to hide away, like, where are they? Husband, where are you? I don't know. I don't have all the answers, but I do know that it's not my fault that the world is wired the way it is, and all I can do is just keep being a ball of love and light, and eventually I'll attract another beaming ball of love and light. I don't know when, I don't know where, I don't know why, I don't know how, I don't know who, and that annoys me, but I think that's okay to be annoyed. I don't think you have to be comfortable with that. I think you can question it. I think you can be uncomfortable. I refrain from saying uncomfortable. Yes! You can be uncomfortable. You can be frustrated. And that doesn't mean that you're not still a hopeful romantic. That means you're human. That means you're human. And we're all human. And remind me to play this at my wedding, because I want y'all to know that when I walk down that aisle, and if he doesn't sob, I'm literally running away, throwing my ring, because there has been so many years of loneliness and of just thinking that there's something wrong with me and working to better myself for myself and my future kids and my future partner that went into that moment. It's not just this beautiful thing that fell into my lap. No. I worked day and night. I built this brick by brick. So at my wedding, if everybody, matter of fact, is not sobbing, clapping in pure bliss over me finally getting my happy ending, because they know how hard it was for me to do that, oh, it's gonna get violent. So there's a TED Talk by Amanda McCracken. I don't know if I said her name right, I'm sorry, but it is all about how longing keeps us from healthy relationships. In this TED Talk, she talks about how she withheld from having sex for the sake of building a very deeply emotional connection. And I resonate with that. I don't want to talk about it too much, because we're saving that for another episode. But she talks about how, again, there were very patriarchal themed comments made to her, and it was very hard to hold out for that. But she knew in her heart that the love that she dreamt of was out there, and she wanted to keep waiting for it. But with that, longing in itself, this perpetual pursuit of love, can be taxing. She says, you fall in love with the possibility and the withdrawal of that possibility. She relates the longing for love to, and I want to give a trigger warning for anybody that could be sensitive to this topic, but she relates the pursuit of love to her relationship with eating, and disordered eating at that. She says, by remaining starved, I could stay hungry, which somehow felt more satisfying than feeling nothing at all, which is very interesting and very accurate. By continuing to pursue love, even though it's never been fulfilled for you, even though you've seen people around you get it, but it's never been given to you, staying in that lane of pursuit keeps you going. Because there's always that possibility of what if. There's always the idea of, oh, he could be here, he could be there, he could be anywhere. Not me turning into Dr. Seuss. It's just the idea of endless possibility. It could literally happen anywhere, anytime, any place, any person. So it's like, why not believe in that? But even that idea just keeps you longing, more, wanting. She was commonly asked, why are you waiting for a loving and committed relationship to have sex? When it should have been, why is it so hard to find such intimacy? Our society so easily is critical of women and their choice to refrain from certain things as it pertains to relationships, and instead of taking a look at the bigger picture and the systems in place that keep us from having these fulfilling relationships, we just target women. We make women the problem, make it their job. The system that was designed to work against them, that we didn't create, is now somehow our fault. She says that longing kept me distracted from my fear of making an imperfect decision, which is a protective mechanism. Her longing stopped her from acting on someone that maybe wasn't long-term. And I feel that way a lot of times too. Like, by me not engaging in maybe like a short-term relationship, I am protecting myself, but it also is like keeping me in the state of waiting. Like, I'm not acting, I'm in limbo. But I'm a firm believer that being alone, being single is always, 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 always better and more worthwhile than being with someone who doesn't know what they have when they have it, who doesn't know how to take care of you, who doesn't know how to love you in the healthy way that you deserve. There's another article from The Atlantic about the people who quit dating. It is all about the idea of detaching from this belief that you're going to find your person, that you're going to have this beautiful relationship and it'll complete you. Completely surrendering to the idea that maybe there isn't someone out there for you, but how can you make your life still worthwhile and have meaning? It talks about how the typical advice to single people who eventually want a family is, well, are you doing something about it? Again, failing to realize that the bigger problem is not the individual person, but the system, conditioning, language around love. The way we are conditioned to talk about it and view it. Men usually don't want to hear about it. Why? Because that's a female topic. And what's the worst thing you could be as a man? A woman. It says that prolonged and unwanted singlehood is a form of ambiguous loss. When loss is ambiguous, closure is near impossible, and it's not clear whether there's anyone to mourn. Perpetual singlehood doesn't have the same gravity, but it can feel similarly unresolved. I love this idea of ambiguous loss. You're not losing something physically or realistically. There's not something that's being taken from you, but it's the idea of dangling this shiny prize in front of your face but saying you can't have it, but not telling them why. Not giving any context. It feels like a loss, even though you haven't actually lost anything. You haven't gained anything either. So it's like, well, what do I do now? Thank you so much for being here. And I also want to clarify that I don't think these conversations should be exclusively for women. And I know that my demographic is primarily women. I love you girls. But if you want to share this with a guy in your life, or if you are a guy, welcome. I'm so happy to have you, because we need to have these conversations together, men and women, to bridge that gap. It doesn't have to be a we're against each other deal. We all want love and we all deserve love. So how can we work together to redefine it and pursue it in a healthy way? I love you so much, and I really enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I rambled a lot and I had a lot to say, and I also apologize that this is going up late, because one thing about me is when I get really interested in a topic, I'm going to go on a rabbit hole and find a bunch of subgenres and subcategories to then research, which I need to get better at. I need to get better at, but bear with me. Also, I apologize for the ugly background. I am recording this at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. So, if you don't already, make sure you go follow the Digging Deep podcast Instagram. Just kidding, it's just at Digging Deep Pod. But follow that Instagram, because I share more on the stories, or I try to be active if I can. But I recently shared that I want to start doing more of like a mini series, I guess you could say, about like Sex and the City and the themes presented in that show. So I love love. I love talking about love. That's not a new idea to any of you, I don't think. But I want to start incorporating more of like the Sex and the City questions and building on that. So if you have any episodes you want me to touch on, let me know. I have a lot that I would love to do. But I love love, and I think we all love love. I think a lot of us are scared to say that we love love and that we want love. But I love you. And I hope you find love too. And I know you will, because you're awesome. So, thank you for watching. I'm going to go get absolutely shredded in the gym right now. Okay, I'll see you next time. Oh, forehead kiss time. Bring it in. Fishing pole, reel it in. Mwah! I love you. Thank you for being here. I will see you very soon. And just remember that you deserve all the love in the world. All of it. It's yours. Bye. In the wise words of Harry Styles, choose love. Every day, it's a choice.